myself, my name is Elyse Sundita. I am the founder of With Love by Eco, a knitting company that helps teach y'all the mindfulness through knitting. And it's from twiggs&co, which is a consulting company that deals with sustainability practices. So,
thank you very much. So Twigs & Company was started because I realized the power that businesses have to leverage real social change. So we start first with organizational sustainability. Everybody thinks about what do you do with your waste, what do you do with your energy, but they don't consider how much they're wasting by having employee turnover. Gallup put out some numbers saying that for every employee that makes roughly $30,000 a year, losing them is going to cost you about $3,400 right off the bat. Just as an example, hospitality has a 71% turnover rate. Disengagement in the United States is at that about 70% disengagement. So all the money that businesses are making is with a very disengaged workforce. So once Twigs&Co comes in, we get your employees on board, everybody's on the same team, making sure that you have a climbable corporate ladder. You don't just promote people and hope that they manage well, you actually train them because those are all measurable and teachable skills. We then address the rest of the issues of sustainability. So what do you do with your energy, what do you do with your water, where do you get your stuff from, the normal stuff.
the positive psychologist, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he actually put words to it. And it basically means when you're so engrossed in a activity, one activity cannot be multitasking, which you know is a myth. It's literally you doing one thing and time just kind of floats away. Everything around you melts and you're in this flow state. And that is really how we can come into our power. And as entrepreneurs, we're constantly pushing ourselves into what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing. And if we don't connect with that flow state, we can actually be burnt out. And that doesn't help nobody, right? That doesn't help your business, that doesn't help with your creativity. You literally have to connect with this flow state and be mindful of it. Does anyone have any questions about that?
How long does it last?
It can last literally for a few seconds up to a few hours. It's really, I would say, I have never been in a flow state for longer than, for me personally, 20 minutes. Just because once I'm in it, I'm like, oh my god, totally in it. And then it's like, oh, the other world, you know, your other thoughts just come into you. So, Anna, have you been in it longer than 20 minutes? Nice. Oh, what were you doing?
I think I just got into a flow writing a paper.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just pretty awesome. Yeah.
Shocked me too.
Like getting into that flow state can be really hard at first, but the more that you practice into it, just like with meditation, the easier it gets. Art comes in all types of ways, and I'm going to pass this on to Anna and ask Anna what is her form of art that she gets into her flow.
Beautiful. So when I was in college, I somehow got into fire spinning. Actually, no, that origin story can be told later. But fire spinning is really cool because it's a very physical kind of activity. These are called club foy. They're two of the tools that you can use. You have everything from a staff, which is a stick with this kind of wick on the end that you soak in fuel, and you light it on fire and spin it very quickly around your body, like any normal sane person would do. If you guys have ever seen like a Hawaiian luau, the poi, that's a very flow state kind of thing. And the Maori actually use that as a form of exercise and a form of stretching. So my first introduction to flow had to go with an actual physical flow of dancing, which is really cool because it makes it really easy to use the centripetal force of something to realize that you're not actually in control. And because you're moving physically and almost mindlessly, it's most easily done to music. So you just get to lose yourself in the music, and it's really kind of beautiful. And then the fire part, the heat adds a different element, which is really cool because fire moves very fast. It's very hot. It's very energetic. And the really neat thing about combining motion with this kind of heat that is surrounding you is it almost amplifies your intention of what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to lose yourself into some music, or just forget the day, or feel motion, or stretch, or whatever it may be, that heat just kind of accelerates that. And then I was doing some, physicality for that?
Yes, please.
Cool. And then I was doing some research. So I have a medicinal background as well. I have a degree in exercise science and sports studies with a concentration in allied health from the University of Long Degree Titles. And it basically set me up to go into physical therapy. I was going to be a pediatric physical therapist. I got segued into muscular therapy, massage therapy, acupuncture, acupressure, aromatherapy, more of the holistic natural therapies. A lot of the ancient healing traditions, and it's not just traditional Chinese medicine, but it's also in the old Indian Ayurvedic traditions and several other traditions as well. They have what they call meridians, which are energy pathways that go through the body. If you look at any traditional non-Western way of healing, you first start with how does the energy move? And it's amazing the number of stories that collaborate with a blockage of energy because of some trauma or something happening, and then suddenly disease appears there, especially cancer. It's a fantastic correlation to try to draw. So in studying these meridians, they actually found the physical pathways for these energy flows in the body out of the University of South Korea in 2013. There are actual channels that directly relate to these energy meridian flows that traditional Chinese medicine has been talking about for thousands of years. Now, these channels are spaces of less resistance that allows things to travel from one part of the body to the other. And what happens is, as we're sitting here sedentary, as we're stressed out and our shoulders are running up towards our ears, or as we're feeling a stitch in our side, or that awful feeling in our stomach when our budget just didn't work out, or any number of issues, writer's block is a great one also, because it's literally called block, writer's block. You bust through that. You bust through that with motion or with mindfulness or something along those lines. But there are actual pathways that go through our body. And are you familiar with the concepts of transmutation? So taking one form of energy and turning it into another. In physical science, you have two forms of energy. You have kinetic energy, and you have potential energy. Potential energy hasn't been unlocked yet. Kinetic energy has been unlocked. Well, this is perfect because we can translate this into how we function in our daily lives. We can translate this into hopping into flow. So I'm a fire sign, I like fire, and I leverage that. So these are actually some of my smaller tools. I used to have what are called fire fans, and so they're about this big, if you could imagine that, and then all of that is just wick that you then soak in fuel and light on fire. When you're spinning them, it sounds like jets, airplane jets, and it literally sucks all of the oxygen out from around where you are when you first light up. It's terrifying. Don't start with all of the wicks lit. Learn that one the hard way. But it's incredible because it drops you into your physicality. It drops you into your body, and awareness is the first step to mindfulness. So most practices have you start with your breath. You're aware of your breath going in and out of your body. You feel the flow of your breath going in and out of your body. You feel the energy that comes with that breath, and you can use that energy to then move things. Well, this to me is just the flow state's the natural progression of that awareness of that energy. And then you can harness that. And so one of the things that I do, and I really appreciate Christina being over here because I stalk her Instagram like nobody's business. And she works out, and the videos that she posts have this really fantastic R&B music that is perfect for a flow state because you have that deep bass rhythm. If you look into tribal music, that deep bass rhythm has been used, again, for centuries. I mean, people knew what was up. They didn't have TV or Facebook to distract them. So that you can tap into that, and that brings out something that's primal in us and attaches us back to that I guess more carnal energy. I think of flow energy as like kind of like the OG energy. Like, it was around before we were, before anything was. It's going to be around after we're gone. It's there. And we just happen to be lucky enough to be able to tap into it, which is super cool. So one of the things that I really like to do, so I don't know how to knit yet. It's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you can do, those are 5 minutes of time for exercise.
Yeah.
Cool. If you don't mind, those of you who feel like it, we're actually going to start with something I learned in a salsa class. That's a really good way to kind of tap into your body. So those who can, if you don't mind standing up. These up.
Feel free to come to the table. Bring chairs. Yeah, come over.
So if you can't slip out of your shoes, feel free to. If not, don't worry about it. One of the things we're going to do is connect back with our feet. And our feet are super important because they're literally our foundations for everything. If it wasn't for them, we'd be walking on our ankles, which looks incredibly uncomfortable. But if you feel the ground, so kind of step back and forth, let your legs just go where they feel natural. And then start swaying back and forth. And as you're swaying back and forth, feel the different parts of your foot connect with the ground. Now take your toes and spread them to the best of your ability. Some of you are still in some heels will change the dynamic. Pointed toes will change the dynamic. But really work on pressing your feet to the ground. Now take the ball of your foot, this part right here, and grind it into the ground and let your knee get in on that. So as you're flowing back, as you're moving back and forth, feel your knees move back and forth as your feet connect with the ground. Now move that up to your butt a little bit. So as that grind happens, feel it kind of rotate up. So you have that connection point with the ground, you are feeling that pressure on the ground, you then move it up, tug back of your leg into your knee goes out, and then your hip goes out too. And let this motion go kind of back and forth. Now if you're like traditional Americans, your hips are going to be tight. You're not used to this motion. We now have a bunch of desk jobs. We don't ever move anymore. And so if this feels tight, then cool, lean into that tightness and let it go. So this is a traditional, like this is how you start with the salsa, and these are Latin dancing, stuff like that. But if you look at what makes Latin dancers really good, they flow. You watch an Argentinian tango with 2 people who know how to do it, oh my God, that's amazing. So then you can take this and you're like, all right, this energy's moving, let's go. And I have a desk that I can stand up at, so I'm like, all right, articles of organization, let's go. And then I get to tell that story of writing my articles of organization. I just started my business recently, and you have to have this operating agreement. It's a whole thing. See me after. I still don't entirely understand it, but that's what Google's for. So feel free to stop swaying, or feel free to keep swaying if you want, because it's important to connect back to your body, because that's where that flow state originates. And much like blockages of energy transmute themselves into physical dysfunction that results in disease, same thing with writer's block, same thing with trying to be creative or getting into anything. If you start playing and having wonder in how things work, so I think of play as a perfect example of like getting into the flow state, just having fun. You're out of your head, you're not worried about whatever you're worried about. You're just there in that moment, and I think that to me is a lot of what flow state is being in that moment. And then you can just take that and leverage it, because energy goes back and forth through everything. We have physical pathways that conduct electrical current. That's our nervous system. We are just energetic meat sacks roaming around trying to figure out what to do.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Cool.
totally does.